it's a great blessing in the lives of those who follow the teachings of Fethullah Gulen, because he promotes interfaith dialogue, education, and nonviolence. And I think those are all very important values. Opportunities for the Hizmet movement to be involved in programs that promote the common good in countries around the world. Value of the Fethullah Gulen inspired schools in the 160. Hostile toward people of other faiths rather than trying to meet people of other faiths. My name is Rosemary Johnston, and I'm a native San Diegan. I have been active in interfaith events and activities here in San Diego for the past 30 years. I had a theology professor at the University of San Diego, Father Ron Pachentz, who told me about the Pacifica Institute. Also, another professor, Dr. Florence Gilman, and I know Florence and her husband have been on the intercultural trip to Turkey. And they invited me to attend one of the meetings of the Pacifica Institute. So I decided to do that, and that's how I became involved with the work of the Hizmet movement and with going on this trip to Turkey. It's a great blessing in the lives of those who follow the teachings of Fethullah Gulen, because he promotes interfaith dialogue, education, and nonviolence. And I think those are all very important values. And it's also important for people to understand that the people of Islam who follow the teachings of Muhammad are not by nature and by virtue of their belief people who are prone to violence and hostility towards people of other faith traditions and other nationalities, etc. I think Gulen's greatest contributions to the common good are his emphases on, first of all, the importance of education. His movement has been responsible for the development of hundreds of schools around the world, and also to provide an alternative view, as I said, to the prevailing view that the best way to resolve differences is by violence, and that people of one particular faith, should look down and be hostile toward people of other faiths, rather than trying to meet people of other faiths and understand their tradition and see the commonalities between the two traditions. Like there are many aspects of Islam that have much in common with Christianity and with Judaism as well. So that has been the greatest contribution, I think, is to develop this value of nonviolence and interfaith dialogue, and also of education of both men and women. I think the interfaith activities are outstanding. I was pleased during our recent tour of Turkey that when we went to Konya to visit the tomb of Rumi, that many of the practices that the Whirling Dervishes had to undergo in order to become a Whirling Dervish were very similar to the regimen that is utilized by Roman Catholic men and women in religious life when they enter the convent or the monastery. They have this period of fasting and prayer, and also his image of paradise is a banquet, and that's very similar to Jesus' image of the heavenly kingdom as a wedding banquet. I believe in the value of the Fethullah Gulen inspired schools in the 160 countries around the world. During our recent visit to Turkey, we got the opportunity to visit an elementary school, a high school, and a university that were based on the teachings of the Gulen movement. And you could really see the holistic nature of the curriculum. For example, at the elementary school, we visited a need day. the children are not only being taught the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, but also there was a great emphasis on music and art and physical education as well. So to create a well-rounded student, and there was equal opportunity for men and women. At Mevlana University, we saw that 70% of the student body there are women. So I think in light of the extremist positions promoted by the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, and the meaning of the word Haram in Nigeria, when they kidnapped those girls earlier this year, Bo Haram translates as Western education is evil. So I think the Gulen, the Hizmet movement provides an important counterpoint to that every child has the right to an education. And that is really, I think, the ultimate solution to our conflicts, is to teach people how to read and write and how to think critically and how to analyze information that people give them and determine whether it's authentic or false, and not just take it at face value and presume that it's true because somebody said it. I really appreciate the variety of charitable activities that the Hizmet movement is involved in. For example, Kimse Yokmu, the charitable foundation in Turkey that we visited during our recent trip there. And Kimse Yokmu translates as, "Is anybody there?" And that's really the first question that occurs to people during a time of crisis and chaos in their lives because of some natural disaster or conflict in the region. They need help, and they want to know is somebody is there that is going to help them. So I think this is very important, and it's a way that we put our faith to work, whether we are Catholic or Jewish or Muslim, that these are the values that our faith teaches us to care for people who are vulnerable and to help them and to serve them. And these charitable foundations and efforts on the part of the Hizmet movement do exactly that. So there are people in need all over the world, and those of us who make it a point to know what's going on in the world and to try to think more globally are very much aware of the many ways in which people are suffering in the world today, not just in Syria and Iraq and Afghanistan and Ukraine, but in Africa now with the Ebola epidemic, and just the tremendous numbers of people living in poverty in Asia, for example, and also the hardships that people throughout Africa continue to face in terms of accessing clean water and nutrition. I think it's very unfortunate to hear that Kimse Yokmu will no longer be able to distribute aid in Turkey because of the actions of the government recently. I think that humanitarian aid must always be apolitical, and people in need are not should not be labeled as Democrats or Republicans or Muslims or Jews or Christians or atheists or Syrians. They are just people in need who are suffering, and as a moral obligation, we are obligated to help them, and we can do that often most effectively through organizations like Kimse Yokmu. So I think it's a terrible blow to the goodwill that Kimse Yokmu promotes to have this government edict come out that they can no longer distribute aid in Turkey. Has the need stopped? No. And why would you appoint someone who has no experience to distribute aid and to develop a competing organization when they don't know what they're doing, and there's already a well-established organization like Kimse Yokmu that's already doing the work effectively? I understand there has been some criticism of the Hizmet movement from people who don't maybe like its teachings, but I have to say, where is the evidence? I think the movement has worked very hard to be apolitical and not to be involved in partisan politics, but it could be seen as a threat to people in power because it promotes an alternative way of thinking and acting than perhaps the people in power have. So sometimes they say power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That people get in power and they develop what we call a big head, become egomaniacs, and they want all the glory and all the spotlight on them, and they can't. They're so insecure they can't handle anyone else in the country getting any credit for the good work that they were doing. They want it to look as though all the good in the country is coming out of this one person, which we know is not only not true, but impossible for any one person to do everything. And that's why it's important. You know, they say it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to help people in need as well. There are many opportunities for the Hizmet movement to be involved in programs that promote the common good in countries around the world and in communities in each of these countries. I'm not, a formal member of the Hizmet movement, but I am a longtime believer in the value and importance of interfaith dialogue and to look at opportunities whenever we can to work together with people of faith. For example, every year on Martin Luther King Day, the Islamic Center of San Diego, together with young people from Jewish communities and First United Methodist in Mission Valley, do a goodwill project to honor Martin Luther King. And that promotes interfaith dialogue among youth, for example. Likewise, in the aftermath of the September 11th, 2001 attacks, a group of us from the Interfaith Coalition for Immigrant Rights were meeting at a church in South Bay, and we were very concerned, first of all, that our country might be going to war because of these attacks, and secondly, those of us who knew Muslims were very concerned about the well-being of Muslims in San Diego because of the obvious antipathy and concern that was being seen in the media, especially about who are these Muslim people and why did they attack these buildings and what do they believe, and they did this in the name of Allah and they did this in the name of God. So I remembered that I knew two Muslim leaders here and I knew that they were peace-loving men, and I began to think, I wonder how they must be feeling now, how ashamed and humiliated and just sick at heart they must feel about these terrorist attacks. So we all decided, let's do something positive in the face of this awful tragedy, and let's help the Muslim community become better known in the community than it has been. Because up until that point in San Diego, it seemed that the Muslim community kept pretty much to itself. Most of us, I knew some Muslims because I was on the Interreligious Council, but many people didn't know any Muslims. So we contacted a couple of imams and we met with them, and we told them that we would like to organize a series of workshops called Meet Your Muslim Neighbors, because we felt there were many positive aspects of Islam, but that these were being neglected in light of the terrorist attacks. So we organized these workshops around San Diego region during the year after 9/11, and we had like a representative from like a priest and a minister and someone from the Jewish community, and then a representative from the Islam community, the Muslim community. And the Muslims presented a PowerPoint about the 5 pillars of Islam and what they believe and also what they don't believe. And then we invited questions from the audience, and the other members of the panel also talked about the commonalities that we share and then the differences that we have. So this proved to be a very effective strategy to help educate people about who the Muslim people are in our community, that there's 80,000 or more Muslims in San Diego region. I don't think people knew that. And they are teachers and doctors and in professions. They work at Qualcomm. They work, we see them in our stores working in retail, and they have the same dreams and visions that we have and share many of the same values. And those values do not include violence and hatred and intolerance.
And what I think is remarkable about Kim Se-yu is not just or only the money that's raised, it's the method with which it's distributed. And my understanding is that any country that they provide aid to, it is Turkish citizens, Hizmet believers, or people who live the Hizmet philosophy, appearing in those countries and directly handing the aid to the person who needs the aid.
We really feel very strongly that what Hizmet is doing in this can only better the world, and regardless of who the people are, if they're in need of help, we have to help them. And Hizmet is an important part of doing that.